interview with Mrs. Esther Trachtenberg. Would you tell us what happened starting in 1939?
Well, the end in September 39, the Russians came in, and then when the war started between Germany, Poland, and Russia, in the beginning of the war, they occupied Grodno, where I come from, and then they divided among themselves, and Grodno went over to the Russian side. They took over rather to the Russian side. From then on, my family had to run away from the Bolsheviks, and my father and I, we started the journey towards Vilna. My mother and my sister had to come officially. At that time, it was possible to do so. My father was caught, that was in January. In January, the 1st of January, it was New Year's Eve when we crossed the border from the White Russians to Lithuanian side. My father and some other friends that went together with us was caught on the border. I by myself was able to cross over with one of the workers from my father's lumber mill. From then on, I stayed in Vilna. I attended the university, and for a year and a half, more or less, under the Lithuanian regime, it was pretty quiet. In 1941, somewhere in July, I believe, there was the first bombardment, and then the Germans came in. And of course, all Jews went into the ghetto, including myself. We had two ghettos, ghetto number 1 and ghetto number 2. I went into the ghetto number 2. Eventually, the ghetto number 2 was liquidated, and I managed to get into the ghetto number 1. I was in the ghetto for about 2 years, and lived through all actions, all how do I say it? I think it's actions, right? Yes, all actions. And finally, I believe it was September, right? It was September 24, where the rest of the Jews from Vilna ghetto, but they took us out to the graveyard, to the Pilsudski graveyard, and they separated men from women, old people from the young, and children. And all this young, to which I belonged at that time, were thrown to the right side, were packed into cars, cattle cars, and were shipped to Riga. We arrived in Riga after about a week's time. We arrived in Riga in the fall, in the late fall. I remember it was very cold. They brought us to Kaiserwald. We were in Kaiserwald put into barracks, about between 1,500 and 2,000 young women in one barrack. We were sitting there for about a week or more. Then when one day some SS men came to ask us for our money, jewelry, and all valuables. What I did personally, I picked, because it so happened that I had a lot, I picked it all, I put it in a scarf, I went to the latrine and I dropped it. Some other girls did the same, but a lot, of course, had to give up. Everybody was afraid, of course, I mean, needless to say. Then they started to sort us out, to send out to different working camps. That was sort of a concentration. The Kaiserwald was a Durchgangskonzentrationslager. And of course, but afterward, when the whole thing finished, a lot of people remained there. A lot of my friends remained there. But I happened to be transferred to Strassenhof, Strafkonzentrationslager. I was in Strassendorf about more than a year and a half. And in Strassendorf, then, for the first time, I understood what it is all about and what happened to us. Because still then, we thought we are in a dream. We couldn't believe it. When they took away everything, everybody had his knapsack and a suitcase with the necessities. But because none of us understood that something like that could happen, we came to Straßenhof in Häftlingssachen, Häftlinkleider, and from there we were placed. All girls were placed from. I'm talking now about the Vilna girls. Were placed on the 4th floor of a factory. It used to be a factory by the name of Jugla. It was near the river Jugla in Riga. 500 girls were in one room on this premises. They were bunks already prepared for us, and there were 3 bunks, one on top of the other. We slept 2 girls to 1 narrow bunk. The rest on the 1st floor, they were men from Riga, that came from Riga. And nobody in between. The 2 floors in between at that time was empty. But in a short time, they were filled up with German Jews and French Jews. They were older people, older ladies. And after a year's time, these old ladies, I mean, in that time they seemed to be old to me, but they weren't really old because they had this action from 30 years up, and everybody that was 30 was old. So they all went, and a lot of my friends had to go with their mothers and other relatives. That was the camp where I rebelled. Oh God. After they took away everything, and we didn't have enough to eat, so we were sitting. After a few months in that camp, when we were very, very hungry, and of course very nervous and not friendly to each other in the beginning, we were seated at one table, 14 girls. Every girl had her job, every day another one, to bring the dishes to the table and take them away, wash them, and so that was my day to bring the dishes, the plates. Twice a week we used to get that what they called Milchsuppe. But of course it was a little bit, I don't know, grayish water, but it was hot. And of course it was a very big deal to us. Well, our Blockälteste, who was a lady from Czechoslovakia, from Praga, Frau Hellerova, used to to pour out portions to everybody. Well, I got into this very brilliant idea and went down to the Koch and told him that Frau Hellerova is asking for another pail of this milk soup, which he gave it to me. And I brought it upstairs. I told the girls to sit quiet, and I'll give them myself. And at the 5th portion, this Frau Hellerova came, she noticed it, and she slapped me over my face, and that made me very angry. And at that moment, I wanted to kill her, but of course the girls wouldn't let me. And they separated us. She went to the Lagerälteste, which was by the name of Hans, and he was very, very popular at that time, very well known in concentration camps all over Germany. He was a German Häftling that was put in for criminal doings. And she went to him and she complained about me and told me, so he gave instructions for me to come down to his office, which I wouldn't. So he sent up two men to catch me, which they couldn't. But finally he said for the whole block, for the whole 500 girls, and it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, to go down and to kniebeuge stehen, which means to get on their knees in the snow. And then when I decided to go and to explain the whole thing, and when I came into his office, and there was a man from Riga by the name of Trachtenberg, who was killed. God, he was killed in a terrible way in the cellars of Straßenhof. And he felt, I could see that he saw my end, but this Lagerälteste Hans says, "Du verfluchte Juden, was hast du?" So I told him only, I said that I thought that I am among people, but I can feel, ich bin among, I forgot the German word for among, a tearer, anyway. So of course he started to beat me up, and I fell a few times, but I got up, I didn't scream, I didn't holler, and I didn't beg. And finally he felt that this is enough punishment for me, so by that time an hour has passed and the whole appel was ready downstairs. Everybody was standing up, except for my block, which was the fourth block, that they were all on their knees, and I had to stay on my knees in the middle of the appel. Then the Unterscharführer came with his adjutant, and he asked what kind of a thing is that. And they told him what has happened. So he told me to get up, and he started to beat me. He started to beat me. I fell once, and I fell twice. He started to beat me with his boots filled with his nails. And finally I couldn't get up anymore, and it started to get lighter. And then when he noticed he has blood all over his sleeves and on the snow. And then when he left me alone, and he said either to have me killed off on the place where we worked, which was a Heeresbaustelle. And if I come back, I shouldn't get any meals altogether. He took away the ration of bread and whatever they gave, soup they gave. I couldn't eat it anyway because I was all swollen. My eyes, nose, everything disappeared. It was like a whole black mess. It took about 5 months for it to go down. All my teeth start to shake, but I got out of it. And from then on, it was routine work and beating, and other girls were beaten. We wanted to organize an ambulatorium, so they would not send out from our camp to Kaiserwald, from which nobody used to return. We wanted to have our own ambulatorium and doctors, which we had among the men that came from Germany, and have our sick people treated in our camp. So we had to bring from the outside boards, nails, hammers, and all kinds of equipment, which we did. We used to hide it. And a lot of girls, of course, were caught, but we decided among ourselves not to say anything because we didn't feel guilty. And I told to one of the girls, listen, I told her, I was beaten up, you saw it, and I got out of it. Well, if you'll be beaten up, you'll get out of it too. Just don't say. Just don't say. And that's how it was. And we built our own sort of outpatient clinic. And but that didn't last too long, because then the Russian front started to come closer, and they had to ship us to Germany. And on boats, they packed us, I don't know how many thousands. A lot of the girls died on the boats because there were too many. They just choked to death. And we came to Stutthof. Well, in Stutthof, that was it was worse than Strasnov, because at least in Strasnov one got out and walked. And in Stutthof, that was sitting day in and day out, night in and night out, 5 girls to a bunk. And after a while, with lack of food and lack of good hygiene, everybody was infected with typhoid. And the girls started to die. It was a terrible epidemic. The Germans started to inject us, which was some kind of a serum, but they used 1 needle to 100 girls, of course, instead to do something good, so they infected us all. So at the end, about 300 girls used to die during the night. Well, there is a lot more to say about, that's this life. I cannot say life in concentration. Oh yes, what I wanted to say that at one time they did send us to the German farmers. They did send us out, and I was sent out for 3 months. At that time I was given decent clothes, warm, and I was given shoes. And I and 4 other girls were sent to the same German peasant. And we worked there all through this end of the summer. And it was, at least we could wash there, and we had enough to eat. And then we came back, and everything started all over, of course. Until they had to run with us. So they put us on barges to get, and they shipped us to Danzig, and from Danzig they put us to the German mainland, which I don't know what kind of a town it was, or what kind of a village, but then they started to go with us deeper into Germany. And near Naumburg in 1945, and that was the 10th of March, all of a sudden they left us in a barn, about 5,000 people. Everybody was sick. The Russians came in, and they took us to hospitals. And from then on, we worked for the Russians, and that wasn't a picnic. And they shipped us home with cattle and so on, and then we had to struggle ourselves back to Poland, and from Poland to Germany, and wherever everybody went.
After the liberation, and after getting out of typhoid, I was asked to stay in the hospital and work. It wasn't me by myself, there were a lot of girls that were sick. We were in the hospital and we remained there. We started to work in the kitchen, and we all worked ourselves up with her. We were forced to. We were brought, in the beginning, we were brought into a big office or some kind of premises, and the Russian soldiers were standing all around, not letting us out. And then they loaded us on trucks, and we had to tell them where we come from at this moment. Since we said that we were sick and we were in this hospital, they brought us back to this after we were working in the wards, attending to wounded soldiers. They were terrible partners. Their medical attendance was very, very bad. A lot of them were dying. After working for them for about 2 months, finally we got a permission to go back home. And they gave us a certificate for, we were 5 girls that we were keeping ourselves together, and they loaded us with that was the last train that was going to Leningrad with wounded soldiers, so we had gotten a coupe in which to stay. And in Ostpreußen, we had to leave, we crossed out. And from then on we had to find some